First of all, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your coverage of this team this year. I know it hasn't been the easiest. We appreciate you being here. Merci à tous d'être ici. Votre couverture de l'équipe cette année, ça n'a pas été l'année la plus facile, mais on apprécie votre temps ici. I got lots of time today, so that's the end of my opening statement, and I hope you ask a lot of good questions. I'm ready.
Hi, Pierre. Terry Marcotte from CTV. First question, your search for a head coach, how is that going to proceed, and will you wait for a president of hockey ops, or will you do that before?
Obviously, I'll address the president of hockey ops right off the bat. For us in our hockey operations, we welcome the addition of an added member. We feel it's going to strengthen our hockey operation group. Whatever title, whatever role that person is, we definitely are going to welcome it. Right from the get-go, Eugene advised me well in advance that this was going to be the plan, and we definitely welcome it within our group. Especially if we can get the nature of someone with a lot of experience that played a similar role to Brian Murray, we'll definitely welcome that within our group. As far as the coaching, I have the full autonomy to hire the coach, whomever that might be. As you know very well, Mark Crawford is a candidate for our coaching position. And out of respect towards him and our coaching staff, we just felt that we wouldn't start that process until the season had ended. And starting as soon as in the next few days, we're going to start that process.
Marc Brassard from Le Droit. What are you going to be looking for in a head coach in this search this time?
I think in this search for a head coach, it's going to be very important. It's going to be very important to find someone. We have a younger group of players, so obviously a good teacher. I think with being a younger group of players, we have more players that are closer that we would call millennials. We're not going to ask the coach if he knows what Fortnite is, but I think it's important to be able to relate to our players. I think at the same time, bring some kind of structure to our team that is needed, or a different type of structure that will allow us to have success and allow us to move this rebuild as quickly as possible.
Bruce Garrett from Post Media. Pierre, do you know how many guys you want to talk to?
As far as possible coaching candidates?
Yeah. And
go ahead, Bruce.
I just had a second part to that. Mark Crawford said yesterday he would meet, that you guys were going to meet. Have you had that meeting, and where does kind of the current coaching staff stand?
Okay. I'll answer the second part of the question first, Bruce. We had a meeting with our coaching staff today. Our hockey operations group had a meeting with our coaching staff today. A very good, productive meeting as far as how the season went, how it had ended, changes that were brought, how we look at our team moving forward. But it wasn't a formal interview. That'll come later on with Mark. Last time, it's no secret, we had a fairly long list to start off, and then we dwindle it down to, we had 9, I would say probably, interviews that were probably 4 to 5 hours, and some were more. I think this time, I don't know if we'll do 9, but I think we'll definitely have 5 to 6 candidates that we'll look at.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bruce.
One other thing. What were your impressions on the job that Mark did in the short period of time that he was behind the bench?
I think that's a good question. I think Mark did a really good job. We're really happy with what he brought, but at the same time, I think we owe it to our fans, the organization, our players, to make sure that we hire the best available coach. But definitely, there are things that Mark did that I'm not going to get into details that we really liked. A few things that I think he can do better, but with his experience, so he definitely is going to be a candidate for us.
Olivier Beauregard, que j'ai Média. Vous n'avez parlé en anglais, l'entraîneur-chef, pour le processus pour l'embauche. De quelle façon vous allez travailler, dans quel sens? Puis est-ce que c'est important de l'avoir avant le repêchage cette saison?
Oui, l'entraîneur va être très important, et de l'avoir avant le repêchage, c'est notre date pour nous. Donc, au point de vue regardé, on va chercher quelqu'un qui peut grandir avec nos jeunes joueurs, avec nos joueurs actuels, quelqu'un qui peut être un bon communicateur, parce que je pense que c'est très important, quelqu'un qui peut leur apprendre c'est quoi être le meilleur joueur de hockey, développer leur potentiel au maximum et en même temps amener une bonne structure à l'équipe, une structure qui va nous apporter du succès.
Wayne Scanlon with Sportsnet.
How are you, Wayne?
Pierre, I'm doing well. Can you tell us, or do you have a sense yet of how the hierarchy is going to work when the new president of Hockey Ops comes in? Is he going to be your boss? Is he someone like a sounding board for you, much like Brian was? Is he going to have a say in who the coach is, et cetera?
Well, we don't know who that person will be. We don't know what title he'll have. So it's difficult for me to answer that for you, Wayne. But just I can tell you one thing from a personal side of things. And when I speak from our hockey operations staff, when I think about Peter McTavish, I think about Tim Pattison, I think about Jim Clark, our head pro scout, Trent Mann, our head amateur scout, that we're excited that we're going to have someone that's going to come in and have experience and someone we can throw ideas at. And the one thing I've never really worried about is I've always been a big team player, whether I was an assistant GM, a GM, a chief amateur scout, a director of player personnel. Adding that extra voice, I think, is just going to make us a better organization.
Pierre, Don Brennan from the Ottawa Sun and the Ottawa Citizen and Post Media, Ottawa. Have you had any indication at all from Chris Kelly if it's something that he wants to do is continue in the coaching profession? Listening to Mark Crawford, he's the brightest young coach this city has seen in a long time. And if you're making a change, there's the fear, I guess, of losing him because a new guy would want to bring in his own staff.
Yeah, I got to tell you, we're very happy with the job Chris has done. I think his ability to relate to the players, I think the ability to use some of the same terms, some of the same terminology that he probably played under to talk to players how to do things is something that we really appreciated. For now, Chris is going to go back as soon as I think tomorrow back to Belleville and will continue his development. And if Mark is the coach, I'm sure he'll talk to Chris about staying on as an assistant coach, and whomever, if it's not Mark, if whomever that person is, I'm sure that person will talk to Chris also about if he wants to continue as a coach. We're going to be respectful to Chris Kelly. He's given so much to this organization. I think as a player, as a development coach, I can tell you we've seen between him and Sean Donovan the improvement in our prospects because they've been under the tutelage of these two gentlemen. And under also with Troy Mann, that we're going to show him the respect, and whatever Chris wants to do in an organization, he knows he's got a job here.
Pierre, just on your free agents, number one is, have you made any decisions or did you give it any indication to any of your unrestricted free agents that they won't be back? And the other thing is, will you sit down with Thomas Chabot on July 1 and talk contract?
I'll start with the second part again, Bruce. I think we all know we don't need to minimize the importance of how Thomas Chabot is important to this organization and for this organization to move forward. You guys know that I'm not going to talk about these things in the media, but we've had preliminary talks, and we hope at a certain point in time to have a lengthy contract extension with Thomas Chabot. Our plan is to keep him for a long time and hopefully be a Senator for life. And the first part of your question was, what was so good about the exit interviews yesterday, and I don't want to get into specifics, is how this group, we might have been in 31st place, and there's nothing to be happy about that, but I think they all had each other's back. There was no infighting, no squabbling, and the indications are that a lot of these pending free agents would like to return. Obviously, they have to fit where we see them on our team. But the exit interviews were really positive and on multiple fronts yesterday. A lot of honesty, a lot of areas where players stepped up and said how we can get better, and I think we really appreciated that. And it was Peter and I that did the exit interviews with the players yesterday.
Pierre, Jonathan Jobin de Radio-Canada. Je vais suivre Bruce avec une question en deux temps. Tu l'as dit d'entrée de jeu, ça n'a pas été une saison facile. Est-ce que tu peux nous ramener un peu Comment ça s'est passé dans ta tête cette saison-là, quand tu as vu tout dérailler un petit peu? Et ensuite, Eugene Melnyk a dit que dans les 6 prochains mois, ça va être très important pour toi. Comment tu vois ton rôle? Qu'est-ce que tu as à faire dans ces mois-là pour assurer un bel avenir à ce club-là?
Oui, c'est une très bonne question, puis je peux même répéter en anglais par la suite. La première partie de la question, c'est où est-ce qu'on a vu l'équipe dérailler. J'utiliserai pas ce mot-là. Je dirais plus que je me sens aussi confortable que jamais dans notre transition de rebâtir l'équipe. Je suis très positif. Il y a eu plusieurs conduites à la maison après des matchs qui n'étaient pas trop plaisants, que je me demandais où l'équipe allait, mais j'ai jamais été aussi positif de la direction qu'on s'en va. Puis quand ça vient à qu'est-ce que M. Melnyk, Eugene a dit, tout à fait vrai. Les prochains 6 mois sont, même je dirais, les prochains 6 mois à 12 mois sont très importants pour l'organisation. On va engager un nouveau entraîneur, on a le prochain repêchage, on a le camp de développement, le camp des recrues, une nouvelle saison qui commence où est-ce qu'on a passé à travers la première phase du rebâtiment et on s'en va dans la deuxième phase du rebâtiment. I can repeat that in English if you want to. The first part of the question is, the question in French was, where did I see this team get off the rails this year? And for us, I got to be as candid as I can be. Of course, there were long nights driving back to Orleans after we lost here, and there were some long nights on the road, and there's no way that I can't deny that. But we feel as good as we've ever felt. We feel we're ahead of where we were last year in this rebuild for the simple reason of the prospects we've acquired, the picks we've acquired, and more importantly, the young stars we have on our team. And no one cares more about this team than probably me. I'm from here. I grew up here. I love this place. And I want to see this team succeed. And I know with what we've done over the last 12 months, I know it's not the sexiest thing to see, but I know we've acquired so many good pieces and so many quality pieces with picks, prospects, the young superstars we have, that we're going to be a good team. And the second part of the question, Eugene said that in the next 6 months, I think it was, we have to get our act together, if I'm not mistaken. And I totally agree with that. The next 6 months, and I even put the next year, are pivotal to this organization. We have to hire the right coach for this rebuild to move it along as quickly as possible. We have an important draft coming up. We have a development camp that you're going to see as good of a group of prospects as we've ever seen. We're going to have a rookie camp where we're going to set, again, as last year we set the foundation, we're going to have good young players that are going to play in that. And then we have the start of our year. And we're not just in a rebuild. Now we're building. We're in phase 2 of the rebuild. The worst is behind us. And we feel, as a hockey group, really passionate about that. And I know there's been some tougher times, but we feel the good times are ahead. If I can say, like, next year we feel, and these are maybe bold statements, but last year I stood on this podium and I said, we have to be better, and we weren't better. Did we see progression? Yes, but we needed to see more progression. Next year, we need to start contending for the playoffs. 2 years from now, we need to be a playoff team. 3 years from now, we need to be a team that contends in the playoffs. And those are words from the general manager. It has to be like that. This year was a tough year, but I really feel the worst is behind us. And maybe I'm too positive, maybe I'm too blunt, but I really feel strongly about these statements.
Lisa Wallace, Canadian Press. Not to be the downer, but draft lottery is tonight. Yeah. Hindsight is always 20/20. You've seen the way Brady Tkachuk performed this year. Any regrets on the decision that was made last year to pick Brady and give up the pick this year?
No. None. Have you seen Brady Tkachuk? I think we've all seen what Brady Tkachuk brings to this hockey team. I've been in the game of hockey for over 25 years. We are lucky, the Ottawa Senators, to have Brady Tkachuk. No one's perfect. We might have done mistakes. I've done mistakes in the past. I know there's one thing I'm proud of, and I think one thing that this hockey operations group is proud of is drafting Brady Tkachuk. And what he brings, the intangibles he brings to the game, you can't find those guys. You end up paying those guys, overpaying them sometimes when they become free agents, and you only have them for at the end of their career. We're going to have Brady Tkachuk here for a long time. And you know what? At the time, we were where we were, and now we are where we are, and we're looking forward, and we're very happy to have him here for a long time.
Just a follow-up.
Yeah, please, Lisa.
Has he surpassed your expectations in the way he's performed, not only on the ice, but the way he just has handled everything that's gone on this season?
No, in a way, yes, but in a way, no. It's kind of like a catch-22 question. To me, people talk about, and I don't want to make it sound exaggerated, but to me, they are hockey royalty. They might be the hardest hockey royalty family in the world, but when you drafted a Tkachuk, he came in here and he did exactly what he was supposed to do. When some veterans left the team, he was a big part of taking the team on his shoulders. He's never going to change. He's going to bother the opposition. He's going to score goals. He's going to do everything in his power to help the Ottawa Senators win. And at the same time, you just look at his infectious personality, if that's a proper word, and just watching him flossing with that kid. Like, who does that? You know, he can relate to people. If you were at a Sens soiree, what he did when he grabbed the girl in a wheelchair and danced with her, like, who does that? Like, on top of being a great hockey player, I think we all wish that our sons or daughters were as well raised as Brady Tkachuk.
And just last, will you watch the draft lottery tonight?
My son has a practice. I'm not saying where. My son has a hockey practice from 7:30 to 9, so I'll follow it on my phone.
Pierre, Cody Ceci a parlé hier qu'il y avait des discussions préliminaires pour la possibilité d'un contrat à long terme. Est-ce que vous êtes vraiment intéressé? Puis qu'est-ce qui fait que vous seriez intéressé de votre côté à le garder à long terme?
C'est une bonne question, Marc. I'll answer it in English after, but Mark asked the question, so I'll answer in French. Pour nous, on aime bien ce que Cody Ceci apporte. Je pense que Cody Ceci, dans un bon rôle, à la bonne place, peut être un joueur de hockey qui peut nous aider à gagner. Comme j'ai dit auparavant, on a eu des discussions préliminaires avec son agent et je vais le laisser là. Mark asked about Cody Ceci, and we feel that Cody Ceci, slotted in the right spot, can be a very good NHL player. I think we've asked a lot of Cody Ceci. We probably asked him outside of his element. But when someone plays those hard minutes, starts in the defensive end and defensive end face-offs, you know, you don't see what else he brings. And with Cody, if we slot him in the right spot, he's someone that we'd like to keep around. And I won't go talk about the discussions, but on contract. But I think he's someone that always plays hurt. He's probably, in my time in Ottawa, except for Anton Volchenkov, have played with the most injuries. He's well respected in that room. Never complains about anything. And you know what? He's a great human being. So, and I think we can't just have 20 guys that are 22 or younger. Someone that can eat up minutes can always be effective.
Follow up to, do you have any issues next year for getting to the salary floor?
No issues to get to the salary floor. The one thing that it's exciting about a rebuild, and now we're in phase 2, I think we're more in the building than the is that we have prospects, we have picks, we have young superstars, we feel, and we have cap space. And those are 4 things that we can use to our advantage in expediting this rebuild. So to us, we're going to field a team that we feel is where we are in our rebuild or in the second phase of the rebuild, and we don't see a problem with that.
Terry and then Chris Stevenson.
Pierre, we've seen a lot of star power leave the team in the last year, starting with Erik Karlsson and Mark Stone, and a lot of fans are wondering if stars don't want to play here. What do you tell them?
I think you always got to look at where certain players are in their career, Terry. I think in our case, we traded Erik Karlsson after a contract offer was made, and we saw that there wasn't much progression. We in a rebuild, you can't let your stars walk away for nothing. And whether we did a good job or not, we're really happy about the pieces we got. And you know what? In saying that, I probably know that I alienated some fans when I said my proudest day as general manager when we traded Mark Stone. I probably have to apologize for that. I think the scout in me was talking too much, and I got to remember that I'm the general manager here. But we know how good Eric Brandstrom's going to be, and that's probably what I should have said. We did thank Mark for everything that he brought, but at the same time, Eric Brandstrom, we think, is going to be a future star in the NHL. And, you know, it's the same thing with stars wanting to play here. You always got to look where they are in their career. We felt we made the four of them very fair offers.
Chris in the back.
Chris Stevenson from The Athletic. You finished 31st this year, last by a long shot in goals against. What do you see as the biggest challenge for this team, even next year, becoming competitive, like you said, and being able to start talking about the playoffs again?
Mm-hmm. I was expecting a Corey Connors question, Chris. Chris, I think that's probably our most important thing. When we were going to hire a coach this year, I think we saw that we can score with a lot of teams. And it wasn't my personal favorite game this year, but the 8-7 game in Chicago was as exciting as any game that we've had in the past few years. But I think our attention to detail, I think our in-zone play, we felt we chased the puck too much. If we don't cut down the number of goals, we're not going to be a successful team. And for us, we know we have enough scoring. We know we have enough talent coming up. Offensive production won't be an issue. But at the same time, we have to play better away from the puck. And that was addressed with the players. My meeting with the players yesterday was not very long. And one of the points that was stressed was we, coaching staff, management, fans, I'll even put in there, were disappointing in how we defend and how we played away from the puck. And that has to be addressed. You can't finish last in the league in goals against and makes the playoffs. It doesn't happen. And it won't happen going forward.
Murray and then Bruce.
Murray Pam, Sporting News. Getting back to the coaching, how important is it to have a defenseman on your staff? Under Guy Boucher, there was not a defenseman on your staff. You have a young defensive core.
I think it's important, but more important is getting the right people. I think if you get the right people, talking to Chris Kelly, he wasn't a defenseman, but he knows more about how to defend than a lot of coaches that were probably defensemen. So I think you have to weigh the positive and negatives, but it's not something that is 100% or 100% certainty.
Anders Nielsen, will you attempt to bring him back? And the second question, you can answer it first if you want.
I will, Bruce.
Do you plan to be active on July 1st?
I think where we are in our rebuild, and I think we look at it as phase two, obviously we're not going to have 20 guys that are going to be 25 and under. We think internally we have a lot of good young prospects, a lot of good players that are close to stepping in. If we feel we need to add one veteran, we might look at it, but I don't expect us to be too busy on July 1st. And your first part of the question? Oh, Nielsen. We're going to sit down. Obviously, we sat down with the coaches. We're going to sit down with our scouting staff, which pro and amateur I feel are some of the best people in the game, and we're going to assess our situation. The one thing, Bruce, that I can tell you is that we saw it this year. You can never have too many good goalies.
Just your thoughts on Anthony Duclair. And I mean, this is a kid, I'll still call him a kid, who, has bounced around a bit. Different comments have been made about him. But how would you analyze his performance here? And is this maybe someone you're interested in bringing back?
I think all our RFAs and UFAs we're going to look at. We're going to look at it. We talked with our coaching staff today. We got their input. Our management group and our scouts are going to sit down together. I know I asked our scouting staff, especially pro, to be at a lot of our games after the trade deadline so they could really have a great input on the direction we're going to go in. But we were happy with Anthony's play. I think He showed that he can produce at the NHL level, but at the right time, we've got to make sure that there's a right fit here.
Pierre, with all due respect, I think that you may have said those words last year about cutting down the goals against.
Yeah.
You may have said that it's not going to happen going forward. I mean, how do you do it, though? You've talked about that it's a must. We know it's a must, Pierre.
Yeah.
And at the same time, not that I don't like Mark Crawford. He's a very nice man. But how can you consider bringing Mark Crawford back when he's been part of the coaching staff that has led you to last place in goals against for 2 years? And if I'm not mistaken, he may have been in charge of the defense.
Yes, he was in charge of defense. Definitely, as I said before, Don, Mark is a candidate. I think how the team plays, how the team's system structure, that comes a lot from the head coach, even though he has input from from his assistants. And we saw some changes under Mark that we did like. So at the same time, I think the changes that he brought were, whether they were little and you can't do a lot in 18 games, we saw an improvement there. So for us, that was something. And whether it's Mark or or someone else that is our head coach next year, as much as communication is a priority, teaching is a priority, the defensive structure of this team will be the biggest priority in hiring their new coach.
Excusez-moi encore une fois pour les besoins de la radio. Vous avez dit en anglais, vous avez parlé du 1er juillet. Je voulais juste savoir, vous vous positionnez quand même sur une équipe qui va rebâtir avec les jeunes, mais est-ce qu'on peut vous voir actifs, les Sénateurs d'Ottawa, le 1er juillet pour le marché des joueurs autonomes?
Quand ça va venir au 1er juillet, on est une équipe qui est en train de rebâtir. Donc, pour nous, aller chercher 5 ou 6 agents libres, c'est pas quelque chose qu'on fait. Mais si on voit, ça va pas tout être des jeunes sur l'équipe l'année prochaine. Mais si on voit qu'on peut ajouter un vétéran qui peut aider notre croissance, c'est certain qu'on va le faire. Mais je pense pas que je nous vois beaucoup actifs le 1er juillet.
Curious about you're talking about a goaltending situation. Where does Mike Connon fit in all this? He's under contract for next year, and how big is the RFA? Is there any possibility that he could go on a one-way, or any chance he goes back to Europe?
We'll talk with his agent after the end of the year when it comes to Hogberg. We're not going to talk about that. He's had a great year. I think he's first or second in goals against average in the American League right now when it comes to Marcus Hogberg. Mike Condon is in Belleville right now. He's practicing with the team. Depending what happens, if we clinch out of it, he might play a game. But I know he's practicing hard and no pain and everything is good as far as his rehab. It took a little bit longer than we took, but we made sure to do it right. So he's under contract with us for next year, so he'll need a place to play.
Just a couple of players yesterday mentioned, they had been contacted by their respective countries for Worlds, but weren't sure because of injuries. So can you maybe give us a wrap-up of what lingering injuries some players are dealing with, and if you've heard of anyone who has committed to play for Worlds?
Injuries. We've got a few guys that have nagging injuries. A few guys not sure they could go. One player I'd rather it come from him than from us, but a pretty good defenseman on our team, I think, is going to commit to going to Canada. So you can read between the lines. Nothing too serious. I know Christian Jaros, I know the World Championship is in his hometown, but he's got a little something going on. Nothing serious, which, kind of like he couldn't finish a game, second last game. But as far as injuries, no surgeries are everyone should be good when camp comes. But we've got some guys have nagging injuries, and pretty much everyone played at the end of the year, so they're not serious enough for surgery. So, but I know a few Swedes have been contacted. They contacted them instead of me, which I didn't really like. I know Christian Jaros will probably has been invited. The first group of guys declines, and the second group goes back in. So, and we've got a lot of guys probably in that second group. So, and we always encourage our players to go to the World Championship. It's a good experience. You get to play meaningful hockey for a little bit longer, and I think it can just help in their progression as players.
Thank you, Pierre. Merci.
Thank you, merci.